we asked, what are high performing reps doing more of, the reps that are reaching their quota more consistently. What it really boils down to is they're getting more face-to-face time. Field sales teams are not successful because of the amount of emails that they can send or the phone calls that they can do.
Right.
The teams that are really kicking ass are the ones that are doing that more often.
Good to hear. It works.
Yeah, it works.
Surprise.
Surprise.
Welcome to the Inside Scoop for Outside Sales, the show that dives deep with industry leaders to get you actionable insights to help field sales professionals like you grow and achieve more. Here's your host, Trey Gibson.
Everyone, this is Trey Gibson, founder and CEO of SPOTIO, and welcome to the Inside Scoop on Outside Sales podcast. Today, we have a special episode for you where we are going to be reviewing our State of Field Sales report for 2023. This is a report that only SPOTIO puts together. It's specifically for the field sales world, and it's invaluable insights that tell you what's going on out there. So we're going to give you some highlights. I have with me Christian. He's our head of marketing here at SPOTIO, and he spearheaded the strategy and collection of the survey data. So we're going to go through the points, tell you a little bit about it, and have some action items that you can do in order to align with what the high-performing field sales teams are doing out there. Christian, how are you?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about this. We've been working on it a while, so eager to share the results.
Yeah, it's awesome. It turned out really good.
So with the State of Field Sales report, this is the fourth time we've done this at SPOTIO, and as you mentioned, Trey, this is kind of the only report of its kind in the industry. And this year we really wanted to expand the focus. Before, I think we were focused on just a few key areas within, what's going on in field sales. But this year we really wanted to make it a much bigger report, talk about a broader range of topics, identify trends and opportunities that our audience can leverage and utilize to exceed their goals. And generally, just try to get more information from more people. So this is the biggest report we've ever done, and it has the most data that we've ever collected, and I think it's something that is going to be really valuable to our audience members who are taking the time to go through it and understand it.
Yeah, that's part of why we started this all those years ago. Is there's just not good information for field sales teams out there. You can't, you can get sales stats, but it's kind of, you don't know, is this specifically for field sales or not? So all this data that we're going to share with you today is specifically for you out there doing field sales.
Yeah,
well, let's jump in.
Yeah, just to add to that real quick, inside sales is over analyzed, over reported. You could find an inside sales
Right.
report everywhere. Throw a rock and you'll hit a sales report, but it's always focused on people that are sitting behind a desk,
Right.
people who are, in front of a computer all day, every day. And very little of it is actually focused on field sales, which is ironic because there's actually more field sales people in the world than there are inside sales people.
Exactly.
So this report is, our attempt to try to make up that shortcoming and fulfill that need in the audience. So
why don't you start? Let's run down just some of the basics of the type of people we surveyed, just to set the stage for what this information we're going to report on is.
Yeah. So, for this report, we wanted to really represent a wide range of different industries, different types of field sellers at all different levels. Field sales is very dynamic. It's multifaceted. There's a lot of different industries that use field sales. And within field sales organizations, there's all sorts of different hierarchies and specialized roles. We didn't want to focus in any one area. We wanted to get a broad insight. So we did. It includes all of those. It includes B2B sellers. It includes B2C sellers. It includes executive leaders, mid-level managers, all the way down to individual reps and even sales operations people. So basically, if you're involved in field sales at all in any industry, there's something in this report that's for you. Now, that being said, we have taken the time, if you were to get the actual report, we have broken it down into more meaningful chunks because obviously data that's relevant to one industry may not be relevant to the other. So I do encourage people, this is kind of a broad overview that we're going to be going through today, but if you're very interested in this and you want to know more about your specific industry or part of the industry, the report has a lot more detailed information in it. So
Nice.
for this survey, we surveyed over 440 field sales professionals across all those different industries and backgrounds and skill levels. So we have a fairly good sample of the industry, and so the information that's in there is, a lot more relevant than if we just interviewed a smaller section.
So let's start off with some of the challenges then that they reported on. It's, there's no hiding the fact that it's tough out there as a seller. And so what are we seeing in terms of the main challenges?
Yeah, I think 2023 is gonna go down as a bit of a unique year for field sales. In the survey, we asked, is sales in your area getting easier or is it getting harder? And 40% of the audience agreed that it is actually getting harder, and there's a variety of reasons for that. We looked at external reasons, the things that are happening to our audience, and the things that are happening within the audience, internal reasons. And the top external reasons that we were able to capture based on the feedback that we received, number one, by a significant margin, was the inflation and slowing economy. I think this year, more than others, it's just getting tougher. The finances of these deals are not the same as they were a year ago.
Right.
Deals that were closing reliably a year ago may not even be viable today. And then number two is, it's harder to find sales talent. And, especially considering this industry, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but, it's turnovers a lot more common in this segment of sales. And so when you have more people leaving the organization than you can bring in, that creates some big challenges by itself. And then the last one is just changes in customer buying behavior. We've heard for years the digitization of, the buying cycle. More and more buyers are going to alternative places to do their research, to find potential vendors. And that's becoming more of a challenge for some companies to adapt to. Internally, like I just said, number one is actually hiring and retention. So that kind of is consistent with the external challenge. Lack of sales talent and hiring and retention is the biggest internal challenge that's keeping people from reaching their goals. But then number two is that there's two reasons all around accountability, keeping reps accountable for the activity that they're supposed to be hitting on a daily basis or weekly basis, and then the process that they're supposed to follow. Field sales is notorious because people are not inside, the four walls of your office. They're harder to manage. They're sort of on their own, and when they're on their own, sometimes they're not doing what they need to do to be successful. So, those are the kind of big two areas that we saw for internal challenges that our audience is trying to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We're experiencing it as well with our sales team. It's you got to be sharp. You got to be on it right now. If you're a seller out there, it's super competitive. The people are holding their purse strings a little tighter. So you're going to have to do a good job of finding qualified prospects and really staying on top of it. You mentioned the financing, and I think that's actually key too. So many of the respondents on this for the survey are using financing to sell their goods and services, right? And so raising interest rates makes it harder to qualify, so on and so forth. So
yeah, I mean, if I was to boil all that down into just one simple statement, I think it's, our industries that we're focused on that have field sales teams, they're going to have to find ways to get more out of less. They're going to have to get more production out of less salespeople. They're going to have to get more sales out of less qualified buyers. And that's a central theme. I mean, that's kind of woven throughout the whole narrative of the State of Field Sales report in general. It's just popped up time and time again. So that feels to me pretty significant message that that the audience should be hearing.
So then, on terms of how these companies are doing year over year, what are they reporting on that? What's the outlook like?
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of ironic, even though this large portion of the audience is saying it's getting tougher than ever before. I think the good news, the silver lining is, despite all those challenges, a large portion of the audience, almost 2/3 of the audience, is still actually seeing growth year over year. Now, it may not be at the pace that they wanted. It may not be, they may not be reaching the goals that they set for themselves in the beginning of the year. But they're seeing growth, and I think that's a good thing. That's something to be celebrated. And that, I
Yeah.
think, what we've seen over the past 5 years, especially during COVID, is field sales is extremely resilient, right?
Yeah.
I mean, field sales professionals, they continually outperform inside sales in almost every measurable way, which just goes to show you that face-to-face selling is still viable, it's still effective, and it's still, a bit, I don't want to say recession proof, but recession resilient, certainly, right? I mean, it's just it's a completely different animal. And I don't know what the stats look like for inside sales, but I'm assuming that it's probably not as good looking as what our
Right.
field sales teams, right?
Companies are still growing, and that's the name of the game. And so let's just keep grinding out there and making it happen. So one of the interesting aspects that we got out of this report is understanding the difference between high performing teams and those that aren't. And so we can slice and dice this data. And we hired a data scientist to actually come in and analyze this, and took away some pretty interesting points on what are high performing teams doing different than the non high performing teams. And why don't you walk us through a couple of those points, and then maybe we'll go through, like, okay, if I'm not a high performing team, or heck, I just want to get better, which we all do, some of the ways that we could do that.
So one of the questions that we asked early on in the survey was, how is your team performing year over year? And we identified the teams that are really strong, that continue to outperform their peers. And we identified those trends and insights that they're doing more of or less of, to try and capture what are the things that are leading to their success. And so I think that number one, and this was not really surprising, but it was surprising at how much more this is happening, or how more frequently this is happening, is high performing teams they're digging into their sales data at a lot more granular level. They're pulling metrics daily, weekly, they're analyzing them, they're using that to assess their performance on a team level, organization level, even on the individual level. And they really do put a lot more value on that data. And I think as a trend, that's pretty significant, right? That tells you something about just one thing that I think everyone can probably start doing more of, and see some pretty significant impact.
Yeah, that's what's that? If it's not measured, it's not getting managed. So yeah, definitely. I mean, when times are tough, you have to hyper focus in on specific areas for metrics. Most of the companies that we see come to Spotio, of course, they know sales data, right? They have, what'd you sell this month or this week, because that has to be turned in. And then they have anecdotes on more of the top of funnel metrics, like how many businesses did I go visit? How many doors did I knock? But it's probably not accurate. I know from my days back managing field sales teams, you'd call someone up. Hey, Christian, how's it going out there? Okay, good. Yeah. Did you get any sales today? Oh man, maybe not really. Okay. Did you do your 25 stops, your visits? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. So it's just kind of a guessing game, and, getting that accurate data is going to be really important. But then also the middle there, and you had said something earlier about some of the challenges, right? And that's about finding those doing more with less. And I think that middle of the funnel is extremely important. Those customers I've made contact with in the past, but maybe weren't ready to buy, but express some level of interest, right? Like, I should be measuring how many of those I have, how many of those are I going back and making contact with and moving down the funnel. And so, yeah, that's how the high performing teams are hyper focused on full funnel metrics. Would you say?
Yeah, I think, when high quality deals become scarce, any one of them that, exits for reasons that are not due to your offering or the skill level of the reps that are talking to them, and it's due to they just fell through the cracks. Those hurt a lot more. And a lot of, I think statistics show that, almost half of all closed lost deals could be boiled down to, just falling through the cracks. We didn't follow the process. We weren't consistent in the approach. We didn't follow up with them in time. And we didn't qualify them ahead of time. So, it's these kind of like back to fundamentals, ideology about we just need to have a consistent process, and you can't have a consistent process without measuring
Right.
something more than just what's coming in at the top and what's leaving out the bottom. You have to have a lot more visible control each step of that process.
So on the second point that high performing teams are doing different.
Yeah, we also took a look at like revenue sources. Is our high performing teams diversifying, the channels at which leads are coming to them, and we actually found some pretty significant results in there. Boiling it down just to kind of two main areas. Unsurprisingly, high performing teams are doing a lot more self prospecting, and that could be because their reps are just going out there and hitting the ground and
Right.
doing things in the field, and talking to more people, just generally more productive. But it could also be that they're talking to, they're using information to kind of gather insights about those buyers and focusing on the deals that matter most. The other piece that I think is really interesting is they're doing more referrals. So once you have a customer that's closed, trying to rely on them to build more pipeline for you. And that's, I think less obvious for teams that aren't doing it, but statistics show that referrals they're just so much more powerful than just a general inbound or outbound lead. They close more consistently,
Right.
they close faster, they close with higher revenue numbers, generally speaking. And sometimes it's 2, 3, or even 4x, more. So, it's just a really reliable channel once you can get that, discipline built up.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting on the two components of self-sourcing and the referrals. On the self-sourcing side, high performing teams, I mean, we've all seen high performing sales reps, and they're typically not relying or not waiting on things only to come to them, right? They're out there hustling, trying to make it happen. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of correlation between that. High performing teams have high performing reps who do these more difficult things like going out and self-sourcing or just being more motivated, frankly. And then the other one on the referrals side, I pulled some stats that we had done for some previous material. We went and found this that only 10% of companies task their teams to get referrals. So many companies out there, 1 out of 10 are even requiring their team to do that. 91% of customers would be willing to give a referral, but only 11% of sales reps actually ask for one. And so, like, as you just said, they close at a higher rate, a higher ticket average, all the good things, but we're just not doing it. High performing teams are, but as a broad scale, we're not.
Yeah, I bet if you looked at which of the 10% of those companies are required, you'd probably find a pretty good
Right.
audience of high performing teams also, right? Like if they're doing that, then they're probably doing a lot of other stuff really well.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things that from other customers and prospects I've spoken with in the past is how do I ask for a referral? So a couple easy ways to do that I just wanted to share is two emails. So one, after the sale is over, fulfillment's been done, you can follow up and just ask your customer how everything went. Thank them for their business. Did everything go good? So on and so forth, and just confirming that they've had a good experience with you and your company. And then after that, give it a week or two, and then you can send a follow-up one and saying, hey, one of my best sources of new customers is referrals from happy customers. Would you be open to send me the names of a few people that you think I might be able to help? And just set that up to automate if you have the tools and technology to do that. Otherwise, just put it on your calendar. And that's just a super simple way to start just getting that out there. You might not get a referral after every customer, but over time it compounds. And the high performing teams are doing that right now.
Yeah.
We hope you're enjoying the inside scoop on outside sales. If you want to hear more value-packed content, be sure to subscribe and check us out anywhere on social at SPOTIO. Now back to the show.
The other things I've learned a little bit more about when it comes to referrals is what's the incentive that you're offering? I know that you have some insight on that, but we get questions from our customers all the time. If you're going to do referrals, which we're big advocates of, what are you paying? What's meaningful? What's real? What's going to move the needle?
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. That's a good. So some of the referral programs I've seen in the past and even have tried to run myself is, hey, Christian, if you give me someone and they end up buying from me, then I'll give you $500 or $100 or $1,000, whatever it is. And what I've seen and seen others do that works better is actually lowering the amount, but paying you for something that you can control. So maybe versus $500 if they buy, $100 just for the name, or $50 just for the name. That way, I give you a name, I give them $100. I'm on with my life. I don't have to worry about if they bought or anything like that. And so it's just a more of a easier exchange. You lower the amount because you can afford to pay more for a sale than you can just a name. But nonetheless, you can do the math on your ratios, those middle of the funnel metrics that we talked about earlier, and come up with an amount that's good for you.
Yeah, having not personally given out referral bonuses, but having been a part of that, it's always more difficult when it's dependent on a sale, because now I'm tracking down my bud, asking him,
yeah, exactly.
Did you close that deal? Because I really want to buy those shoes. That's just
Yeah,
uncomfortable
right.
for everyone involved.
Yeah.
I think so. That makes sense.
That's good. Okay, so we have more frequent metric reporting analysis, the revenue sources of referrals and self-sourcing. What's next?
I think the next couple big themes were, what are the managers doing differently, and then what are the reps doing differently? And I think when we look at the managers' time, these are not the executive leaders, not the people who are managing multiple teams, but the frontline managers. What are they doing more frequently than their peers to help their teams succeed at a greater clip? And it's really obvious, but the data has also made it pretty clear. They're spending more time coaching. And so and this actually is interesting because there's a bit of a difference here between B2B and B2C teams, but in general, what we see is the sweet spot for coaching is spending more than 6 hours a week coaching your teams, using the data, right? Understanding what's going on with individuals, helping them, in different aspects of their role, and just spending more time, face to face with them, trying to help them be successful. I think that also kind of goes back to that retention issue that we were talking about. I think the teams that you see that are doing this more often, I would guess, maybe the data would correlate this, but probably have less issues with turnover, less retention issues, less hiring issues, because the frontline managers are more invested in helping their team members be successful. So that's, and then what I mentioned earlier about the difference between B2B and B2C, B2B teams are doing a lot more of this, and almost I think by a large order of magnitude, like 50% more of B2B sales managers are spending that much time or more on a weekly basis. And it's hard to understand why that may be, without bringing in some non-scientific information, but they're just doing it more frequently, and the revenue numbers seem to be a bit stronger on the B2B side. So, that could be a good correlating factor. It may be nothing, but it's just worth noting.
Yeah. So in terms of coaching, it goes back to that first point about the metrics and data, is understand where your team is struggling the most and focus there. That'd be a great place to start. 6 hours. So more than 6 hours a week. That's quite a bit. So it's basically almost one full day of their time, or 1/5 of their week is spent just coaching and developing their team. And so if you're out there and you're not investing that level of time, get started, because that's what the high performing teams are doing.
Yeah, there was actually a previous episode that you were talking about this particular issue, and there were some interesting stats that were brought up in there, but it correlates what was being shared in that one, right? The more time you're spent on coaching, the more successful your reps are going to be. But it's also about understanding not just coaching on what the pitch is or how to say it or the specific words you're going to use, but the different aspects of the process and what needs to happen when and why that's so important. Reps don't know that necessarily. And they don't see the impact of that data. The only people who have access to that information are the managers. So,
Yeah, you bring up a good point about the coaching, because a coach, we call it coaching for a reason. The coach isn't out there doing throwing the ball to the receiver, right? The coach is helping that quarterback understand how to make better decisions, what the strategy is, right? And then the technique in order to do that. They're not doing it for them. And so that's what good coaching is. You're working with the sales rep, their sales person, in order to understand where they're going and how to get there themselves, not necessarily doing it for them. Of course, that's great to do ride-alongs in field sales. We did that a lot with our team, as you go and you can ride along with them to really help maybe get a deal over the line, and that goes a long way. But work with them on the process, and that could pay dividends, because you're trying to multiply your time out there when you do the coaching.
Yeah, and the biggest obstacle keeping most managers from, I think most managers want to do more coaching. Maybe that's a bad assumption, but a lot of managers want to do more coaching, and I think the biggest obstacle for that is just not having that visibility. They do have to go physically ride along with people to see what's going on, and so I think it goes back to that data conversation. It's just having access to being able to see it and understand it when you're not right next to them.
So that was on the manager side. What about on the rep side?
The two big areas. So there was we asked, what are high performing reps doing more of, the reps that are reaching their quota more consistently, and what it really boils down to is they're getting more face-to-face time. That's the reason why field sales teams are successful. Field sales teams are not successful because of the amount of emails that they can send or the phone calls that they can do,
right?
Or the amount of time they spend, updating, a Google spreadsheet or a CRM or something like that, right? The sole reason why you want a field sales team is to get in front of customers face to face. And so, unsurprisingly, the teams that are really kicking ass are the ones that are doing that more often.
Good to hear. It works.
Yeah, it works. I mean, surprise. But that also means that you only have so much time in a day, right? So something's got to give. If you're doing more of one thing, you're probably doing less of other things. And
right.
I think that really boils down to they're just being more efficient in their day. They're being more productive with the things that are not revenue generating. The meetings, the updating data, the planning out their day. You save a couple hours here and there, and next thing you know, that's 10 extra hours a week, 20 extra hours a week of being able to be in front of prospects and customers and getting that face-to-face time. So, just really understanding what's going on in a day, in a rep's day, and then maximizing that. And that kind of speaks to the next one, which is that planning and preparation. So the high performing teams, they indicated they're going in with a plan. They're spending more time up front, the beginning of their day or week or whatever your process looks like. But they're actually sitting down and kind of planning out, these are the places I'm going to hit. These are the houses. These are the businesses. I'm going to go to this area. I'm going to follow up with Bob, who I talked to last week, right? There's just a lot more time and preparation spent versus just going out there, shooting from the hip, and going and just knocking doors. You're going to be effective doing that, but you're going to be a lot more effective if you really take the time to carefully plan out what's happening and when. Talking to the people ahead of time. Hey, I'm going to be in your area. Love to come by and talk to you. Right? There's just a lot more that you can do to be effective once you're there. The high performing teams are doing that at a much more frequent clip.
Yeah, like you said, not a big surprise. Of course, as a field sales software, we're glad to hear that the high performers are getting more face time. That's the only reason a company would have a field sales program, is to get face time. And so, a couple things you had mentioned is just the planning on where I'm going to be to get more face time. So, if I'm a B2C sales rep, like it's sitting inside my territory, it's really working that. If I'm setting appointments inside of my neighborhood or my area, right, I want to keep them close together. I want to reduce windshield time. And for my B2B, it's very similar. If I'm in an area, I go visit a customer or I'm prospecting, who else is around me? Don't drive all the way back across town to go, zigzag across town, and you're just adding miles in windshield time. It really comes down to being mindful of that geography that you're in. And it takes planning and prepping. Salespeople typically don't like do that. It's like, hey man, I'm a closer. Just let me get out there, go start just going where I'm going, and spend that time up front. I call it like sharpening the axe. There's that saying, like, who was it, George Washington or Abraham Lincoln? If I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 sharpening my axe, right? Like, this is planning and prepping. While you can't do too much of it, then you're just getting ready to get ready. Spend some time though, understanding where you're going to go to get that increased face time, because it pays off.
Yeah, I think good planning and preparation also starts at the manager level, right? Are you giving your reps the tools that they need to be able to do that effectively? Are you helping them by giving them territories that are qualified, are have a good prospect density, you have good quality information to know who you're talking to, and so I think it does like good rep planning does kind of start a couple steps before it gets to them, but then really making sure that reps are spending time doing that. The worst thing that they can do is ignore all the pieces that the leadership team and the managers did to help them be successful, and they just kind of go out still half cocked without a plan, right? So that's it's just that continuity across the process.
One of the good examples of this that I heard one of our customers do is, let's say that they're going out to West Texas to visit a customer. Lubbock, that's where that's the example I use, but also where I went to college. So they're going out to Lubbock and there's a customer out there. Well, they're going to go and find all of the customers they currently have, right? Send them a text or email blast saying, hey, I'm going to be in your area on Wednesday. You have time to meet, right? And then all the prospects that I've talked to before, maybe, but I haven't bought yet, and send them another, right? So I'm actually going to set up my whole time there to just maximize that face time. So your appointments and your calendar is already lined out by the time your feet hit the ground in whatever area you're going to. So just something I heard that one of our customers does, I thought was really good.
If we had to ask anyone, they probably would agree that's great, and they would definitely want to do that. I think what I've heard, the biggest obstacle to that is it takes so much time.
Yeah.
And when you're running and gunning, that's time that you're not doing other things with. And so that, I think it's going to play into the next topic, if you don't mind if I just kind of lead off with that, which is,
and we didn't make this up. This is like, boy, you would have thought being a software that we could, just make this question up, but this is actually what was reported. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, because some of those things that we just talked about are so labor intensive, that the inevitable thing that these teams are doing, because they know they want to do stuff like that, is utilize technology to help them be efficient, to help them automate that, to help them, just really make sure that the process is being followed and they're getting more out of each opportunity. And so what we saw is the high performing teams not only have a different view of technology, where it's just mission critical for their goals. It's central to their strategies for the next couple of years. They're also investing into the technology more frequently. That right there off the bat is pretty significant, just the way that they're viewing the technology. Low performing teams tend to have less of a critical view of how important that technology is to their performance. But then, how frequently are they using technology? Is one enough? Is two enough? What we saw in the data is high performing teams are using technology across a wider range of activities in their sales process, 4 or more on average, in different solutions in their tech stack versus the low performing counterparts. So it's that willingness to leverage technology to get the performance they want and make that investment in technology to help improve their performance.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days of, hey, Christian, here's your system of record or your CRM, and good luck out there. Like every CRM, that I've used is built for someone sitting behind a desk, and so you need a system of action to sit on top of that at least. And so, yeah, like that's the thing is if you're out there and you're wondering what your competitors are doing that are running circles around you right now, they're adopting 4 more pieces of technology. And I said adopting, not buying, right? That adopting aspect is key because, like you mentioned, Christian, is they're actually implementing it and using it across the sales process and adopting it. And that takes commitment from the top. This is the business we're in. So just letting the listeners know out there, like if you're, hey, let's just go buy 4 things and throw it out there and it'll solve all of our problems. No. It takes adoption. It takes effort. But once you get that tech stack set up, a lot of these other things we've been talking about actually kind of fall into place and take care of themselves.
Like the viewing the technology is critical and being willing to invest. Those 2 things, they have to happen, if not simultaneously. They have to be there. Those 2 thoughts have to be there together at the same time. The worst thing you can do, and I think every sales team is guilty of this at one point, but you go buy a piece of technology that promises everything, and all your dreams are going to come true, and then you just don't follow through with really like instilling that process in your sales team, or really require its usage. Next thing you know, 6 months later, you're like, I don't even know why we bought that thing. So having that, like, this is going to be critical, investing the time and energy into making sure you're getting the most out of it, and really making sure that every dollar you're spending in technology is worthwhile. You're getting some sort of return on investment out of it.
So just kind of circling back, I'll go through these points that our data showed, the survey showed what high performing teams are doing different than those that are not high performing. Is number 1, more frequent metric reporting and analysis. They have their top revenue sources are self-sourcing and referrals, which was really interesting on the referrals. Number 3 is spending 6+ hours coaching and developing their sales team each week. That's on the manager side. On the rep side, they're getting more face-to-face time with customers and prospects, and also spending more time planning and prepping. And then finally, high-performing teams are investing in adopting 4 or more technology tools. So really interesting information. So Christian, if you're going to sum up like kind of the report or these points, what would you say?
First and foremost, sales, it's not really a mystery anymore. The sales in this field sales category it's getting more difficult for all the reasons we talked about. Economic reasons, that's just the most recent issue, but what's to be determined is it gonna get easier, right? And I think it may not. I think the message is, what if this is the new norm, and we all need to kind of adjust to it, right? And so if that's the case, even if it's not the case, even if this is just a short-term pain that the industry is experiencing, when these challenges occur in an industry, what it tends to do for people who are trying to sell is it exposes issues that may have been there all along, right? You need to spend more time face-to-face selling. You have too much stuff going on that's keeping your reps from doing that. Those things become more pronounced. They become larger issues because now every deal is more important. And so, I think the message is, you have an opportunity here to really embrace this as embrace these challenges, this time that we're in the industry, to really shore up your processes, your company, your strategy, and adapt and modify what you're doing to this potentially new normal. And there are companies who are doing it now. I mean, that's the thing that we saw in the
Right.
data. There are companies who are, despite all odds, outperforming, by a significant margin their peers. And these are the things that they're doing. So the proof is there. It's just whether or not, and people who are listening to this are willing to really embrace those changes, to be able to overcome the challenges and hopefully thrive in the future, right? I think that the people who do that are going to make it out on the other side of 2023 or beyond in a much stronger place than they were before.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be required if you want to keep, that the growth going and being a leader in your industry. So, yeah, hopefully this was super informative for all y'all. We enjoyed collecting the survey, doing the analysis, seeing the results. So Christian, where can they get this? It's a free report, right? So if they want to download it, where's the best place to go?
SPOTIO.com /state of field sales will get you there. It's free. Absolutely. It's good for us. It's good for the audience. It's just important that everyone hears this. So we try not to make any money on this, despite how much money we spend on it.
Yeah.
And then we are going to be doing upcoming in the near future. We're going to be doing a kind of a more in-depth webinar, kind of digging into this data a bit more, helping people understand different aspects of it. So be on the lookout for that. That should be coming sometime in August or September 2023.
Awesome. Been a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Y'all go download the report and look for more content coming out in the future on the amazing information that's in there. Talk to y'all later.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You've just listened to the Inside Scoop on Outside Sales Podcast with your host, Trey Gibson. Please feel free to leave us a review and subscribe to our channel so you can catch our next episode. Thank you for listening.